Welcome home, assholes.
Ah, man, today's video is a confusing one. It's part of one of the most distressing subgenres of exploitation films, and that being R&R. Now, I don't even know if you can say that word on this platform without getting it flagged, so I'll just refer to it as R&R, but I'm no Blank and Revenge, and if you're an exploitation fan, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But this movie is confusing. By the way, we're talking about Savage Streets from 1984. It's confusing because unlike the other R&R movies from like the 70s, early 80s, this one has a shiny veneer. When the viewer is first presented with a bunch of dudes and chicks having fun cruising Hollywood Boulevard, it looks more like a fun 80s slasher than a gritty R&R movie. However, this one gets every bit as dark as any of those big boy R&R movies of the 70s, but we'll see how that, we'll talk more about that in a minute. But before I get into it, why don't you do your best bud, me, a solid and subscribe to the channel and like this vid, and even say a little comment if you'd like. That would be fantastic. Okay, before we get into any of that, let's talk about the film itself, shall we? The first thing I'll say is that we're lucky that we got this film at all due to like a ton of hiccups, hurdles in making it. The film was originally scheduled to go into production in June of 1983, but it was stopped before it even began. Secondly, a guy named Billy Fine was the original writer and producer for this project, and he cast Cherie Currie from The Runaways, slated for the main role. Well, for one reason or another, she was replaced by Linda Blair. Fine had actually already worked with Blair on Chained Heat from 1983. The thing is that Blair wasn't fond of making a couple of exploitation flicks right in a row, claiming that Chained Heat wasn't the film that she went out to make, and that's according to AFI.com. Well, fortunately for us, Chained Heat made a boatload of money at the box office, and she had some kind of profit-based deal, so she was convinced to do Savage Streets, and thank goodness. It would be interesting to see how Cherie Currie would have done anyway. Well, the casting of Linda Blair made Linnea Quigley, it made her very nervous, since she and Blair, who were supposed to be sisters, they look so very different, whereas she and Currie do not. Obviously, that became a moot point because we got the movie, but I can definitely understand where some of that anxiety came from. And also, just another thing that sucked in the beginning production of this movie, a guy named Ton DeSimone was a director. He was originally slated to be the director. He began filming but was fired early on by Billy Fine. But after about 2 weeks of filming, and they brought on Danny Steinman to be hired. And Steinman is known for The Unseen and Friday the 13th Part 5. I think The New Beginning is what he was. I hope I'm right. But yeah, so he was hired to direct it, but the production ran out of money. Well, I mean, I don't know if it's lucky, but I guess we're lucky enough that the mob exists and was able to further finance the film. And I'd read a little bit about that, and it wasn't exactly clear how true that was until I watched a YouTube video with Q&A in 2016 with Johnny Vancouver, Sal Landy, and Scott Mayer, all actors in the film, obviously. I'll link the videos and the websites that I used to gather all this info about the movie in the description, just so you know it's just not me talking. But it's funny because in it, Sal Landy, the guy who plays Fargo, even called out Michael Francesi as having been credited in the film. Pardon me. That's former crime underboss of the Colombo family, Michael Francesi, because his mob money financed the movie. Well, even though Fine ended up firing DeSimone, he was later let go from the production as well. It sounds like a wild time. But Fine as a producer was replaced by a guy named John Strong, neither of whom Steinman really got along with, but apparently Strong was hired to protect the investment of the money men, and I'm not sure that I would have had the balls to even clash with him, but I guess Danny Steinman's got brass balls, so yeah, there's tons of stories and little anecdotes about how they would butt heads here from time to time. This movie starred Linda Blair as Brenda, the badass older sister of Heather. Heather, played by Linnea Quigley, is a deaf mute and a very sweet, naive young lady. They have a friend group or girl gang or whatever. They're called the Satins. Members include Rachel, played by Deborah Blee, Francine, played by Lisa Freeman, Stevie, played by Marcia Carr, Maria, played by Louisa Leshkin, and Stella, played by Ina Romeo. Then on the other hand, we have the dude gang called the Scars. We have Red, played by Scott Mayer. We have Vince, played by Johnny Venokur. Fargo, played by, let's see, did I say that right? Venokur. Yeah, okay, cool. Fargo, played by Sal Landy, and Jake, their leader, played by Robert Dreyer. And rounding out the cast, we have a prominent bad guy in authority position, John Vernon, playing Principal Underwood. Savage Streets start out with a bunch of seemingly happy-go-lucky girls walking down Hollywood Boulevard at night. They're having fun, they're laughing, they're window shopping and being silly. I mean, it's obvious that they love each other and are having fun. I mean, what else can you do when some sweet hair metal is playing in the background, which is what's going on in this very first scene of the movie. The leader of this group of women is obviously Brenda. The girls are checking with her and taking their cues from her. She has a little sister, Heather, who is also part of the group, and who Brenda watches over with eagle eyes. She's deaf and mute, and we find this out when a crew of dudes almost hit her with their car as she's crossing the street. Well, the girls get mad, but the dudes just wanted to see what's going on with them and potentially have some fun. Well, it turns out these dudes call themselves the Scars. And even though they take this little rejection in kind and, they talk some shit, stuff like that, but they're mean-ass dope dealers. Oh, they leave the girls alone after they were told off, but the girls decided to get back at them for almost hitting Heather by freaking stealing their car, dropping it off, and filling it with garbage. And we're not talking like newspaper stuff. We're talking like banana peels and real garbage. Now, disclaimer, I'm not inferring that anyone deserved anything, because the Scars end up getting revenge for this. But I will say that was a pretty harsh prank and that I would be mad. Obviously, we're all normal human beings, so we wouldn't go to the lengths that the Scars did. But anyway, dang, girls, chill out on that. Well, they go their own separate ways for the evening. The next day at school, the Scars are doing their rounds as responsible drug dealers, making deliveries, collections, and whatever else drug dealers do. Well, they see Heather walking into the gym from under the bleachers, and she's all alone, so they follow her. Heather is waiting for Brenda to shower up so they can walk home together, but Brenda gets occupied with a cat fight in an 80s high school shower with some girl whose boyfriend keeps hitting on Brenda. So they fight. Okay, and it's a total brawl in the shower. And man, I don't know if I have enough nudie hires, so I'm gonna kind of cut around this part. But two things I have to say about this fight. Number one, they're fighting over one of the dopiest looking dudes on the planet, and that is not up for debate. At this time, he was a dorky looking guy, and it's like, good, okay, cool. And number two, apparently catfights in the shower are contagious because in the background of the main fight, there are two randos also fighting naked that have nothing to do with the original fight. Don't they know that the undercard and the main event aren't supposed to happen at the same time? Anyhow, this is when the movie gets bad. Poor innocent Heather is left alone in the gym while the fighting is going on. Well, one of the Scars, Red, starts talking to her, and he was actually in the beginning was pretty sweet to her. But that didn't last long, and since it got weird, Heather tried to escape, but Fargo, Vince, and Jake all drag her into a room and brutally gang-R her. Not only does that, but Jake gives her a nice postscript and kicks her in the head on his way out. It's at this point that the movie turns from an almost fun little thriller to a very brutal and dark R&R film, but more on that later. Well, from here on out, the tone of the movie is dire. The Scars and the Satins have some more run-ins at the local disco and elsewhere. Dissent is happening within the ranks of the Scars because Vince is really having a problem because of the guilt of the whole situation. And it really comes to a head when the Scars chase Francine, who just purchased her wedding dress and was so very happy, going off to get married, start her new life with their dude. And they're like, okay, we're just going to scare her, or at least that's what Vince thought. Well, Jake, the angriest man alive, by the way, not only scares her, but grabs her, lifts her above his head, and chucks her over a bridge into the Los Angeles River. And that was actually a super intense scene. Vince claims to be done with the Scars and even tries to leave town, but not before going to the hospital to apologize to Heather, much to the disdain of Brenda. Well, the movie comes to a head when the final conflict is set. Brenda has tracked the Scars down to a textile factory after buying a crossbow, arrows, and a few bear traps. Will Brenda take out the Scars, thus ending their reign of terror? Will Heather survive the brutalization? And should every single movie have a montage of a hot chick getting ready to take revenge on a set of bad guys, all to the song of Justice for One, performed by John Farnham? Find out by watching Savage Streets from 1984. And just as an aside, I don't want to play it here for fear of copyright strike, but I'm going to link that song so you can know exactly what I'm talking about. 80s, they were perfect. They had the best montages of any time. And this was a really great song for a montage. Maybe not as great as Eye of the Tiger with Rocky training, but this one is pretty good. Listen to it while Brenda's getting ready to go take her revenge. It's great. Anyway, In the beginning of this video, I mentioned that this was a confusing movie, at least as to where it fits with the rest of the R&R genre. Like I said, the beginning was fun. The girls love each other. So fun, in fact, that one of the girls picks up a Playgirl with Kurt Russell. And at least I thought it was Kurt Russell. And so I had to do some research. I read that it was Sylvester Stallone in the IMDb trivia. But I did research so you guys don't have to and put it in your search history. Kurt Russell was on the cover of the March 1984 issue of Playgirl, and Stallone was on it in the 1985 and the 1981. So it was definitely Kurt Russell. But anyway, he's on the cover and says,
You check out the schlong on him?
there's a whole jealous girlfriend and a dopey dude story. The principal has some hilarious lines.
Go f*** an iceberg.
It all turns dark during the scene in the gym. It just totally switches over. Is this as brutal as some of the main R&R movies? Maybe, maybe not. But the movies like I Spit on Your Grave, The Last House on the Left, Miss 45, and Thriller, A Cruel Picture don't start out in such a bright way. It's like difficult to describe except to say that this had the 80s fun times facade until that scene. And maybe the R scene in The Last House on the Left and I Spit on Your Grave are more brutal. But those just looked like that kind of movie. Do you know what I mean? Does that make sense? I don't know. Thankfully, there was a lot of editing done in the scene in Savage Streets because it was brutal enough and definitely got the point across. Apparently, it only showed like part of it. Apparently, everybody had their turn, and there was 3 kicks to the head afterward, and it was just, it was dark and brutal as it was, man. But I'll tell you what, it's at this point that we as an audience realize that these scars are serious business. And it's not like Robert Dreyer ever looked like a nice guy in this movie, but he just went darker and angrier as the movie progressed. And this guy has a face and facial expressions that can really send chills, man. I mean, we get to see the dark side from Sal Lindy as Fargo, Scott Mayer as Red, but man, Robert Dreyer is a scary dude. I also think that Johnny Vencour did an underrated job playing the remorseful Vince. He did. I'll play, but it's crazy how like sad and distressed he seems at the bridge scene. But it was awful. But anyways, it's also confusing because there are scenes like I think are meant to be titillating. Like what weird timing to have Brenda as she ponders her revenge on the scars, naked in the tub with the slow motion boom shot down on top of her, making sure we have time to see everything. Man, it's just a very strange scene, very strange timing. I also mentioned that it was weird seeing Linda Blair playing a serious and intimidating role. There were moments of cringe, which we're used to in 80s fun, horror, and exploitation, but not so much in brutal 70s and 80s R&R film, early 80s, which also made this confusing to me as whether we're supposed to be having fun or not. I'm not the only person who thought that her acting was bad. Stephen Holden from the New York Times said that the performances in this were crude cartoons, and I feel like that is the perfect way to describe how this differs from other R&R films, actually. Linda Blair got a Golden Raspberry for Worst Actress that year, partly for this movie and a couple other ones. But, who would have guessed or ever thought that the sweet girl from The Exorcist, would be saying the C and F word? And I'm not talking about the one that rhymes with Puck. I'm talking about the other F word, which is probably worse. Anyway, so as bad as that scene was, and it definitely was, I feel like because of the cartoonish portrayal of these characters, it strikes me as more of a fun little exploitation movie. So, is that how I'm supposed to do? Is this the correct way to interpret the movie? Well, who knows? I don't really feel like there's a specific way that anybody needs to interpret any kind of movie. Because typically, I promise that, especially like with the prominent horror culture today, I'm unlikely to interpret any movie how I'm supposed to being defined by the horror culture people these days. It's weird. That's a whole other topic that I feel strongly about, but I'm not even going to talk about on this show. But anyway, like I said, I enjoy this movie every time I watch it. Not sure what this says about me, but I find it fun, entertaining, kick-ass, say all the words. But make no mistake, this is a brutal R&R movie. But its presentation and execution is just fun. Even though this is probably the only time I've seen Linnea Quigley nudity that wasn't fun. One cool thing that I did read about is doing some research was that Arrow Video released this movie on DVD, fully uncut for the first time in the UK from 2011. However, many of the copies were destroyed in a fire at the warehouse during the London riots at the same time. But this DVD is now considered rare and is highly sought after by collectors. And I happen to have it. So it's funny because I bought it. It's a Region B. I bought it even before I had a Region Free player. Was it Region 2 or Region B? I don't know. But anyways, it's a British copy of it. Anyway, but so yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'll sell that. Who knows? Anyway. That's all I got for this one, man. As usual, thanks a ton for watching. Like, subscribe, check out corpsecollective.com. Until next time, I'll catch you guys later.